Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and it's time for the round one recap. I have my good friend Rich, aka Dynasty Island, over on Twitter here to help me out with going through everything that happened last night and telling you what it means for your Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Rich, thank you for being here. And before we get started talking about last night, just tell everybody what you've been working on and where they can find your work.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. It's busy season for me. I put together a rookie guide every year. So, we put out the Fantasy Sanctuary rookie guide a couple of weeks ago now, the pre-draft version, and then the post-draft version will be dropping on Wednesday. 90 players, profiled film analysis, my rookie model, my rankings, everything like that. So yeah, find me on X at Dynasty Island, or all of my work's over on the Fantasy Sanctuary now.
On today's show, we will talk about Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, and much, much more. But as always, we will start with 3 questions for our guests. And I've maybe changed my tune a little bit on this one in the last 12 hours since I initially wrote the question, but I think it's still it's a good question. Did 2025 rookie picks take a massive hit on night one?
I'm mid first round picks took a massive hit pending the running backs going early this evening. I certainly think some of the draft capital and the landing spots for that sort of second tier of wide receivers last night took a massive hit. So yeah, but I'll sort of sit on the fence slightly, Heath, and sort of say yes and no.
Yeah, I think as I was tweeting through it this morning, I think you look at some day one hits maybe for Egbuka, maybe for Hampton. I mean, we'll see how that committee situation works out with Najee Harris. Maybe he just takes the job and is the clear RB1 there. And then obviously just one quarterback. There's 2 in the first round, but I don't think we think Jaxon Dart's going to start at the beginning of the year. So just one surefire starting quarterback out of the group. It's a little bit scary, at least, but I'm hopeful, like you, that early in round 2, we're going to get a run on running backs and wide receivers, and they're going to get good landing spots and lots of opportunity, and we're going to feel much better about picks, 5 through 8 than I do right now. The second question, is there any debate for you right now about the second pick in a rookie superflex draft?
So for me, there's not, because for me, it's Cam Ward, absolutely. But based on the questions I've had from some of our members and on Twitter today, I'd guess there's probably a lot of debate, because a lot of people seem to think Omarion Hampton should be the second pick. A lot of people think Tetairoa McMillan should be. So yeah, I think the 101 is consensus, but I think that second pick is probably up for debate and argument significantly.
Well, and it's funny. You said Tet, you said Hampton. You did not say Travis Hunter, who's probably the guy that I got the most questions about overnight. And that's because I've been pretty optimistic about Hunter. If he was a full-time wide receiver, I thought he was the best wide receiver in the class. And it seems, we'll talk more about Hunter later, but it seems like the talk, at least, has trended towards the offensive side of the ball a little bit. There's still going to be a massive amount of risk, though, for Hunter. I do think that would you at least say, like, if you are a contender for some reason with 102 or even just a good roster and you really have a significant need for one of those 3 positions, quarterback, running back, or wide receiver versus the other 2, it's defensible to take a different position than quarterback at 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's very much a big tier of those guys, and I can make an argument for any of them. I think for me on the Hunter point, I was the one who was sitting here over the last 3 months. I've been saying Travis Hunter should be the 101 if he goes to a good landing spot and we get told that he's going to play wide receiver more than he's going to play DB. Now, it's funny because he's gone to a good landing spot with what I believe is a good quarterback that's going to play majority of wide receiver. And I'm now sitting here very nervous because I know the press conference, they said he's going to play wide receiver more. I'll be honest, I just don't believe it. I think a team that's got such a gaping hole at cornerback, and it is so much easier to slot him in at cornerback and play part-time offense. I'm nervous, and I just don't think I can spend the 102 on a guy that I don't know how much he's going to play. And I can see myself in season being sat there with the headache every week of, right, can I start Travis Hunter? Is he going to get enough snaps to be startable? And that just, to me, I'd rather not have that debate. And so that's why I'm saying that I've got him that sort of tier below those other three guys.
It's going to be an interesting thing because I can also, like, maybe I've got a little more of a FOMO feeling and you've got a little bit of a worry feeling, but I could also see myself like believing that Hunter is the best wide receiver in the class and maybe the 101 if everything goes right, but passing on him because of risk and then watching him just go ballistic on the NFL in his rookie season and feeling terrible about myself for the next 10 years. Question number 3, even though I think it's like question number 6 now, and you mentioned it, you think that Travis Hunter has a good quarterback. I think that we've talked about Trevor Lawrence several times over the last 2 or 3 years. I've been a little bit more skeptical. You've been a little bit more optimistic, but I tweeted last night, even I cannot get over the idea of a Trevor Lawrence breakout now, like a true breakout season with, if he's got Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter full time. So in a superflex dynasty league, how much would you be willing to pay to buy Lawrence right now?
So I guess I've always been a bit of a Lawrence believer, as you alluded to. I think we've discussed him a few times over the past couple of years. And yeah, I still believe in the talent. I think you give him one of the better offensive coordinators in the league, play callers in Liam Cohen. I think Brian Thomas showed last year what he was and what he can be down the stretch. And you add in, he probably walks in as a top 5 wide receiver 2 in terms of Travis Hunter in the league already. I'm really excited. And yeah, I'd happily go out and buy Trevor Lawrence. I'd pay at least 2 kind of random future firsts plus. Would I go to 3? I think that would be kind of maybe territory. I'm not sure I could quite get there, but yeah, I'd easily happily pay a couple of firsts to go and grab Trevor Lawrence.
So I definitely moved Lawrence up in my dynasty quarterback rankings last night. I just want to give you a few names and see if we're in the same range or if you're still a little higher than me. So would you rather have Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff on your dynasty team?
Oh, easily Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence or Dak?
Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence or Cam Ward?
Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence or CJ Stroud?
CJ Stroud.
Okay, so I think you're about 4 spots higher than I am, but that's kind of the QB 15 through 19 range of the quarterback rankings. A very good QB2 that honestly, with his pedigree and as many believers as he has, if we get a month of the season where he's producing like a top 10 quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is going to be a consensus top 10 dynasty quarterback again. Like if we just get a month of Travis Hunter looking like who we think he is and Lawrence balling out, he's gonna fly up dynasty rankings even more than he did last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's easily that guy that could be in the kind of second tier along with, Herbert's, Love, Hurts, right, Stroud, those kind of guys. He's going to be in that conversation definitely if he has, even perhaps a couple of good clips in training camp of him throwing deep balls to Thomas and Hunter.
That's what's going to happen. I'm going to say now, I can't even resist Trevor Lawrence with this receiving duo. And then you guys are all going to push Trevor Lawrence up so high that I'm going to have to be the Trevor Lawrence skeptic again by the time we get to August. Let's take a short break and we'll jump in to Cam Ward.
The most original musical ever is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
Better Man absolutely sizzles from start to finish. Wow! Better Man, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Cam Ward, the 101 of the NFL draft. Rich is 102 in Superflex drafts, headed to the Tennessee Titans. Do you like this fit for Cam Ward?
I do, and I think that the Titans have been really sensible this offseason in terms of they've not gone out and chased, massively flashy moves where they've mortgaged the future and traded loads of future picks. And okay, they threw around a bit of money in free agency, but not obscene volumes of money. But they've just gone out and made really sensible moves to bring in NFL caliber players. You think of the Kevin Zeitler signing, Tyler Lockett. Obviously, Dan Moore was quite expensive, but they brought in Dan Moore. And it's like now we're looking at an offense that should have a solid offensive line, has got a collection of capable NFL wide receivers, has got one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. And I think that they've given him a solid platform. Yes, of course, I'd like a little bit more upside. I'd like a bit more juice in there. And you never know, we might see it today and moving forward. But it's a capable platform to allow Cam Ward to go out and hopefully produce what we all think he can be, which is a competent starting quarterback with significant upside to go beyond that.
Do you view him as somebody who can just hit the ground running, or as more of a prospect? And I guess one way to put that in context, last year the Titans threw for 3,300 yards and 22 touchdowns. Do you think Cam Ward improves on that in year one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're now in a world where college prospects are transferring left, right, and center and having to learn an offense on the fly. Cam Ward, is exactly that, from Incarnate Ward to Washington State to Miami. And he produced immediately in every single one of those landing spots. And I see no reason why, the Titans have obviously been working and came to this decision a couple of months ago. I imagine he's probably already well-versed in the offense, and he's going to come into training camp. I'd expect to see Will Levis probably gets traded tonight or tomorrow, and he's certainly beating out Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle for starting snap. So I think he's going to be a day one starter. And I think for fantasy, anytime you've got that combination of arm talent that can push the ball downfield, that's high value targets. And, he's not an elite running quarterback, but he's got enough mobility that we could add a little bit. I think this offense has got a solid grounding, as I said earlier, and I think it's going to be a useful QB2 for fantasy from day one.
So we've seen Trevor Lawrence, just to go back to him for a second, kind of live maybe in that 300-yard rushing range, around 15 to 20 rushing yards per game. My initial projections, I came out with Cam Ward basically at 300 yards rushing for next season. Is this like a Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, like a mobile quarterback, but not a true rushing quarterback in terms of upside?
Yeah, I think that those sort of ranges are great. I love the comp of Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback because he's not, in terms of rushing, not as a quarterback, he's not someone that's going to scramble loads, but when it calls for it, he's really intelligent at scrambling. He picks up an obscene amount of first downs on those kind of third and 8, 3rd and 9s that kill a defense where they feel like they've got you locked up. He escapes the pocket and scrambles for first down. And it's infuriating if you're watching it as a fan of the other side. But for fantasy, as you said, it's going to add, decent production. I think he's going to be useful in and around the goal line. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up with sort of 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns on top of that as well.
One of the reasons that I've not been entirely sold on Ward as the 102 is I'm not, and maybe this doesn't matter as much to you because of the super flex format, and you got to, like, we're starting QB 1 through 24 anyway, but he opens in my dynasty rankings at QB 15. It'll be 23 at the start of the season. And I think I'm a little bit higher on him than a lot of people. I don't know that I really see, like, most of the quarterbacks ahead of him are 27 or younger. I kind of have, and we got a class coming next year. We think maybe have guys in it that are better than him. I kind of have a hard time seeing Cam Ward becoming a top 12 dynasty quarterback. Like, he seems like he's just like probably a pretty solid QB2. You think that's fair, or does he have more upside that I'm not giving him credit for?
No, I think, to me, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that's perfect. That I don't think he's got that elite upside. I don't think he's going to be, a top 15 NFL quarterback. I don't think he's got that within his range of outcomes. But for me, I guess it depends on how you value quarterback in Superflex League.
Right.
I place a lot of value in quarterbacks, and I'm happy to draft him at 102 if you said to me he's a QB2 for the next 5, 6, 7 years, whatever. To me, that's worthy of the 102 because I think quarterbacks are so valuable in that Superflex environment. I mean, to give you an idea, he's my QB 22 currently in my ranks, but he's still my 102. So that shows how much value I'm placing in the quarterback position in these Superflex formats.
Well, and I think, like, again, if you're talking about the accumulation of assets, it's so much easier to get value for a quarterback in a dynasty Superflex league via trade than it is to go find a quarterback via trade. And so I do think when it comes to, like, the accumulation of dynasty assets, that type of stance makes sense. And a lot of teams picking 102 probably aren't thinking about winning right now anyway. So it doesn't matter as much. I'm a little bit more skeptical that Ward is going to be the type of player that helps me win fantasy championships. Whereas I do think that Hampton or Hunter or Tet might become that type of guy. I'm probably more that way with Hunter, because Tet McMillan kind of feels similar to me, that I'm pretty sure he's going to be a fantasy wide receiver 2. I'm not sure that he's ever going to be a fantasy wide receiver 1. Travis Hunter, like, let's wait to talk about him in just a little bit more. Any final thoughts on Cam Ward on the Titans?
No, I think you've summed it up perfectly there in terms of, for me, a pick like Cam Ward is insulated value in terms of Cam Ward can have a fairly terrible rookie year, and in a year's time, he'll probably still be around QB 22, QB 25 in most dynasty ranks and most valuations, because he's still going to be a starting quarterback. And I think that's part of the thing you need to add into that evaluation. It's not just the production, it's the insulation. You know, if Omarion Hampton comes out and has an absolute shocker of a year, can't get on the field, Najee Harris is the working back, and he looks bad, he's not going to be worth a second round pick. Right. Whereas Cam Ward will always have that insulated value.
No, that's a very good point. Let's go from like one end of the spectrum to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, because I don't know how much insulated value there is with Travis Hunter if he becomes a full-time cornerback sometime in the next 18 months. But Travis Hunter goes second overall to Jacksonville. Jacksonville paid a king's ransom to go up and get this guy. They're talking about playing him on both sides of the ball. Just in case you forgot, last year at Colorado, 96 catches, 1,258 yards, 15 receiving touchdowns while playing as a full-time corner. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. He was arguably the best defensive back in this NFL draft and the best wide receiver in this NFL draft. What else is there to say about Travis Hunter?
I think he's phenomenal. He's absolutely incredible. I mean, I always lean towards the numbers side of things. If you look at my rookie model, so he's a 95th percentile prospect. That puts him on par with Malik Neighbors. That's ahead of Marvin Harrison. That's ahead of Tet McMillan. Like, this is a truly generational elite prospect as a wide receiver. And as I said earlier, if you could tell me that he was going to be 100% wide receiver, run every route, play every snap, he's my 101, no conversation. I'd take him ahead of Jeanty in every format. It's just that question, isn't it? Is he going to be a wide receiver? Is he going to be able to hold up? I think the amount the Jags paid up to trade up to go and get him, and that just makes me nervous, because I do wonder if we get this kind of, he plays 60, 70% on offense and maybe takes a few snaps off on defense and early downs and run situations, and therefore he's sort of not a full player on either side of the ball. So I think that just knocks it slightly.
I think that's a great point, and I'm skeptical that he can be a full-time player. Now, you say 60, 70%. Like I could maybe get on board with Travis Hunter being so good that at a 75% snap share, he's a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL in a couple of years. Like, I think that's possible. I do want to kind of just tell you where I'm at in terms of, I try to go through what I think the upside is, what I think a reasonable projection is. I've obviously got him as riskier than your average early wide receiver, but I came up with basically like somewhere around a 13 or 14 fantasy points per game this year, which is a high-end wide receiver 3 that has so much upside that you have to draft him higher than he projects, obviously. But then I always try to put a number in there for like, what's a guy's reasonable upside in a given season over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And just for reference, I've got 2 guys in my dynasty rankings at 390 fantasy points for a reasonable upside, which is an absurd reasonable upside, but it's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And then basically I have a few guys, Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, and Travis Hunter at 370 fantasy points. Am I too high on the upside for Hunter? And do you think a high-end wide receiver 3 is about where he needs to be valued next year based on what we know right now?
I think I struggle to see a world where we're saying his upside is greater than Brian Thomas. I think that what Brian Thomas showed last year, I think as a prospect, Travis Hunter's a better prospect than Brian Thomas was. But I just think that what Brian Thomas showed last year as a route runner in terms of his release package was far better than I ever thought he showed in college. And I think that his upside is so great that I can't put Travis Hunter ahead of him, if that makes sense at the moment. I think his upside's definitely in that wide receiver 1 range of outcomes. I mean, you mentioned earlier about sort of Tetairoa McMillan not having that. I think Hunter does have that. I feel like it's just so tough to have a true answer on this because we just don't know where he's going to play. I think, yeah, as you said, for me, he's currently my dynasty wide receiver 24, but I could easily see, as you said, that high upside, that low ceiling. It's just mad, and yeah, I'm kind of scrambled slightly.
Okay, so wide receiver 24 is, I've got him at wide receiver 10 right now, so I'm ignoring the downside too much. So I just wonder, let's just go into the imaginary world for a moment where you don't have to worry. I've promised you at least an 80% offensive snap share for Travis Hunter. That's what he's going to do whenever he's healthy. And so you're getting full-time wide receiver Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter or Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I'd go Marvin Harrison, I think.
Travis Hunter or Ladd McConkey?
I'd probably go Travis Hunter there.
Hunter or Drake London?
Drake London.
Okay. So, and then I assume Hunter over Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice in that range.
Not Rashee Rice, but the other guys. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, I'm a huge Rashee Rice guy. So.
Right. No, I again, he's got his own couple of question marks coming back from the injury and the suspension. We've had this question in the chat, and I've been trying to find a way to do it, and I've not yet. But hypothetically, you're getting points for Travis Hunter's offensive and defensive production in an IDP league. Is he the 101?
I guess it depends slightly on scoring because obviously traditional scoring corners don't really score very highly in IDP leagues. But yeah, if you're getting, as you said, the upside of him as a wide receiver and you're tacking on even like 2-3 points per game as a corner, that's massive upside, isn't it, in terms of what he could potentially be?
Do you see any risk for Hunter that doesn't have to do with maybe playing corner?
No. I think he's as a pure wide receiver. I think he's one of the more safer prospects we've had in the last few years. I think he's an elite separator. I think he's an absolute, dynamite contested catch guy. Like, you think a guy that's sub 190 pounds shouldn't be as good as he is with the ball in the air. I think he's fantastic as a playmaker with the ball in his hands. So as a pure prospect, I've got very few questions. It is just purely what is his role in the offense. And if he is going to play both sides of the ball, we say the NFL has a 100% injury rate. Yeah. Does that mean he's got a 200% injury rate because he's playing both sides of the ball?
I do certainly think that increases his injury rate. I'll have to check the math on the 200% part. But I think that's a good way to wrap up Travis Hunter. Listen, we have him like 12 spots apart and where we rank him in our dynasty wide receiver rankings. I think we have him. I'm not sure you said today, right now. Let's assume we get just a regular Friday night. So a couple of good landing spots for running backs, a couple for wide receivers, but I'm not sure if it really matters. Today, right now, Travis Hunter's 105, 106 for you?
Yeah. So yeah, Jeanty, that kind of next tier of Ward, McMillan, Hampton, and then Hunter. That's where I'm comfortable with that risk reward balance.
So we are about 12 spots apart in dynasty wide receiver rankings. We're about 3 spots apart in terms of where you should take them in a rookie draft. But this is not because Rich has any doubts at all about Travis Hunter. This is entirely about your risk philosophy as a dynasty fantasy football manager. We talked about Cam Ward to start, and like if he has a blemish, it's that we're not sure that there's really starter in a 1 QB league upside, but he's got really good insulated value. Travis Hunter may have a season as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy at some point, but he has a lot of risk, and you could lose all of the value that you invest in him in a very short period of time, even if he's not through injury, just for another reason. So that's a lot of fun for you guys preparing for your rookie drafts. Let's take all the controversy out of this and get to the third player selected. Ashton Jeanty goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. as sure as both Rich and I talk about Travis Hunter being the number one wide receiver prospect in this class, everyone else was about Ashton Jeanty being the number one running back prospect in this class. When I had Matt Waldman on for the running back preview earlier this month, he had him as the number one running back prospect in the last 3 years. I think some people would say the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. He lands in a spot with virtually no competition for touches. Is there anything else to say about Ashton Jeanty?
No, I think he's absolutely phenomenal. You know, he's amazing to watch. I think he's an elite prospect. You know, I talked about my rookie model earlier. He's 99th percentile in that. The guys in the last 10 years that have been above 95th percentile, they've averaged one season of 22.14 points per game in their first 3 seasons in the league. So yeah, it's all looking pretty good.
It's everything you could want. Yes.
Yeah. My one slight niggle, I guess, is that I think we're talking about this as an amazing landing spot, an amazing situation because there's Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, right, and we want to run the ball, and I get that. I think they've got 2 good offensive linemen,
right,
and I think they've got 3 below average guys, and it's like, okay, we've still got time. They might address that tonight. There might be, you know, some moves or, you know, players added in free agency or what. But at the moment, I've got 3 big question marks on that offensive line, and that scares me slightly. I think Jeanty's good enough that he can overcome that, but it's still a slight niggle, should we say?
No, I think that makes sense. There's been, for the past several years now, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase have just swapped spots, and people will say, "Oh, you've got Jefferson over Chase now," and I just kind of wanted to shrug and be like, they're 2 best wide receivers in Dynasty. I don't care which one you rank first. I am starting to feel that way about Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Ashton Jeanty. The consensus on Twitter last night seemed to be Jeanty is a top 3 running back. There were people arguing for 1. I initially came out with him as 2 behind Bijan, ahead of Gibbs, but they're all so close that I just would like to say these are the 3 best running backs in Dynasty fantasy football. I don't care what order you rank them in. Do you care?
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think this is where I love, you know, trade values and tiered-based systems rather than pure rankings, because actually it's so much easier to just say these 3 guys, they're all the same value, they're all in the same tier. Take of that what you will. It's it makes things much harder when you have to actually put one ahead of the other, doesn't it?
So I would assume you would say if I could get Bijan plus for Jeanty, I would take it. If I could get Jeanty plus for Bijan, I would take it. Just take advantage if anybody else has any certainty between these 3.
Yeah, absolutely. If you know, I probably would want more than a third, just because that doesn't really move any needles for me. But yeah, if you can get 2/3 or, you know, another player you like or something like that, I'd take any of them in any situation, in any roster situation, whether you're a contender or a rebuilder or whatever. I think they're all pretty much exactly the same value.
I just had a question from Alex in the chat. Some people might say Chase Brown was a day 1 winner because the Bengals didn't take a running back. I'd like to see them get through day 2 before I would declare him a draft day winner. But is Chase Brown plus 106 too much to offer for Jeanty? And I'll let you answer, Rich, but I will just say if I had Jeanty and somebody offered me Chase Brown in the 106, I would just quickly say no.
Yeah, I think I'm probably closer, but I still think it's a no. I think if you threw in a random future second, I'd probably do that. But yeah, I'd still want Jeanty there.
But to answer your question, Alex, no, it's not too much. Offer it. Maybe they'll take it. That'd be fantastic for you. Let's take our second break. When we come back, we've got Colston Loveland. I'm sorry, let's not take a second break quite. Let's talk about Tetairoa McMillan first. Apologies to Claire. I threw in an audible in there, play action fake. Tetairoa McMillan is on the Carolina Panthers. Before we get to Ted, was there a movement for Bryce Young in your dynasty quarterback rankings like there was for me with Trevor Lawrence based on this move?
A small move, but yeah, there was a move. He jumped ahead of Tua and JJ McCarthy for me, which is up 2 spots, should we say? Just because it's another big-bodied, another resource added to him, and a guy that I think pairs really nicely with his style and how he's going to play. So yeah, a small adjustment.
Just on that same note, would you rather have Bryce Young or Cam Ward right now?
Bryce Young, but Bryce Young's it's the same tier. The Cam Ward, JJ McCarthy to Bryce Young, that's the tier for me.
Okay, now let's actually talk about the rookie. I made this reference several times in the pre-draft process, so I want to ask you about this first. It had nothing to do with the actual guy, but of the players that were being considered in round one at the wide receiver position, McMillan was the one that reminded me the most of recent big-bodied first-round busts. Is that just completely unfair to him?
A little bit. I have this theory that I throw out that I call it the Calvin Johnson theory, because I say big, fast, that prototypical size speed combination gets overdrafted and overhyped in dynasty circles. And I call it the Calvin Johnson theory because people are chasing after that dream of what an Adonis, what a physical specimen could be. And I think that's where we see the Treylon Burks and Xavier Legette's and, even someone like DK Metcalf, who was once the dynasty wide receiver one and things like that. I don't think Tet McMillan is the athlete to be thrown in that bucket, if that makes sense. I think he's a little bit more nuanced. I think he's got a little bit better foot speed. I think he's got a little bit more route running nous to not just cast that kind of aspersion of big-bodied, fast guy that gets overdrafted.
I think that's one of the first questions I have, and I've seen different opinions on this. So it sounds like he's a better underneath route runner than a lot of players his size. Do you think he's going to have the ability to separate in the intermediate part of the field from NFL corners?
I think when we talk about route running and separation, it's kind of a cast as like a yes/no thing. But actually, there's many different ways you can gain separation. Is he going to be running with 6 yards of open space because he's broken a DB's ankles and is clear away? No. But is he going to be able to, particularly on, you think of something like AJ Brown in Tennessee, where he ran huge amounts of those in-breaking routes, where he wasn't having to gain like 3 yards of separation. It was a foot of separation, but because of his body control and his ability to essentially box out the defender, he was open because that was all he needed to get there. And I think that's the kind of world where I see Tet McMillan is, he's good at the contested catch, but that's not all he relies on. I think he's got the foot speed. I think he's got the nuanced route running to create that separation. But he's never going to be, someone like a Calvin Ridley or someone like a Keenan Allen who's just a pure route running marvel that can break people apart and be completely wide open.
So he comes into a receiving room that most people look at and say, well, he's got no competition for targets. But all Adam Thielen does is earn targets, and I think he's still on the team. Xavier Legette was a pretty early pick last year. He's still on the team. Jalen Coker was actually good as a rookie. He's still on the team. Do you see McMillan, and I don't know, maybe even in the profile has something to do with this, but do you see him as someone who walks in year one and is earning a 25% target share in this room? I was closer to 20% in my first projections, which doesn't get you a lot of good places for 2025 redraft.
I think he'll probably be somewhere in between those two. I think should we say 22 and a half?
Okay, that works.
I think he's going to be a good. I think it's going to develop as the year goes on. I think we've already seen Adam Thielen's that safety blanket. He's going to command targets. I really liked Jalen Coker last year. I've got serious concerns about Xavier Legette, but I think the type of player is they're going to manufacture touches for him. They're going to try and give him some opportunity after the catch, maybe almost a bit like Rashee Rice was when he first came out as a rookie, where you've got a lot of drags, crossing routes, things like that. But I think as the season goes on, this offense is going to start to run through Tet McMillan. And I think as we get down the stretch, as we get towards those fantasy playoffs, I think he's going to be a really valuable asset and someone that, you might have to sit and wait once you've drafted him and probably can't start him the first few weeks. But I think once it gets to the money time, I think he'll be a reliable kind of top 24 option as a rookie.
I've got McMillan at wide receiver 19 currently in my dynasty rankings. Where are you at?
I am 13 currently.
13. So
yeah.
you've got him probably ahead of Addison and Higgins. What about Roma Dunze?
Yeah, so ahead of all those guys. So I've got him. He's the head of a tier with Lad McConkey, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, JSN, Jalen Waddle.
All right, that's going to do it. Wait for no one more. That's going to do it for Tet McMillan. But you're going into a rookie draft this year and you need to cut somebody for a 3rd round rookie pick? Are you holding on to Thielen or Coker?
Thielen probably not, but I reckon there's a contending team I can probably get something from in a trade. Coker, I will always shine a light on Coker and hold out some hope.
Okay, Claire. Now we're going to take a break and then we'll get into the guys drafted later in round 1. So I can't keep Rich here for an hour and a half. So we're going to move a little bit quicker through these guys in the second half of the show. Colston Loveland to the Bears, the first tight end drafted ahead of Tyler Warren. Jacob Gibbs was on this show earlier this week on our tight end preview, and he said that Colston Loveland was the best tight end in this class. Is Colston Loveland now your number 1 tight end in this class?
Always has been, always will be.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think he's a great prospect. I think this is a great landing spot. And yeah, wheels up for Loveland, certainly.
Do you think that Cole Kmet has any impact at all in 2025?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think Cole Kmet is the perfect embodiment of replacement level player. And I don't think maybe he'll be using some 2 tight end sets, and it means Loveland's not 100% snap share guy, but how many rookie tight ends walk in and be 100% snap share guy? I'm not concerned at all.
I assume that the pecking order in Detroit, that's what I wanted to say. We're going DJ Moore is first in targets, Roma Dunze is second in targets, and Warren is third, slightly ahead of the running backs. Or Loveland.
Yeah. I mean, it depends who we see drafted early day 2. If they add in a Travion Henderson, we won those early 2nd round picks. Maybe I'll differ slightly, but at the moment, that's how I break it down.
Does this mean anything at all to you for Caleb Williams? And I saw some of the discussion when Loveland was drafted that, man, he's locked in with a good quarterback for a long time and a great offense. And I didn't see quite enough last year to say that Caleb Williams is now a good NFL quarterback.
I think he's competent. I think that hopefully Ben Johnson coming in will provide enough that we can see that ceiling. So I say questions still out, but I'm hopeful.
Got Rich a little bit choked up there questioning whether Caleb Williams is good. No, just take a couple of minutes. You're good. No problem. I put last night that I wasn't actually that excited about Warren or Loveland in their rookie seasons. And I've been wrong about tight ends in rookie seasons before. I've been right a few times. But it seems like it's a pretty strong consensus that one of these guys is now tight end 4 in the Dynasty landscape, and one of these guys is now tight end 5. Do you think it's more likely that Loveland surpasses one of Bowers, McBride, or Laporta in the next couple of years, or that he falls outside of the top 5?
So I've already got Loveland ahead of Laporta.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe that answers that. I don't see a world in which he overtakes Bowers or McBride.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd also like to throw TJ Hawkinson in that mix in terms of the guys in that sort of second tier as well.
Yeah, I think he is the guy that I have one spot behind them. So he's my tight end 6, and I wouldn't be all that surprised by a bounce back season for him. And then, of course, if you're a contender, you'd probably just rather have George Kittle than a lot of these guys and just go win a championship. Let's talk about Tyler Warren, who went 4 picks later to the Colts. Such a confusing situation, because you can definitely look at the coach and say, oh, he's had a lot of success with tight ends in the past. This offense wants to use their tight end. This is a good landing spot for Tyler Warren. On the other hand, he has Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones as his 2 quarterback options, and he has Michael Pittman and Josh Downs ahead of him in the target pecking order, and this has not been a high-volume pass offense. Do you think this is a good, bad, or indifferent landing spot for Warren?
I think it's a terrible landing spot, and I think that this is sometimes where landing spot analysis is difficult because we look at it and say he's going to be the tight end one. There's a clear starting role. He's going to be great. But for me, I'm looking at it saying Tyler Warren's not a traditional wide tight end. Like, he's not a guy that can line up in line, win with his blocking and be a competent receiving weapon. He's a guy that needs to be moved around, needs to line up in the slot. Well, Josh Downs is, to me, one of the better slot receivers, pure slot receivers in the NFL. So are we taking Josh Downs out of the slot to put Tyler Warren in the slot? Yes, okay, we can kind of put them both on the field, but then you've got Pittman, who thrives on those kind of intermediate in breaking routes. You've got AD Mitchell. I just don't see how these pieces all fit. Yeah, there's a world where Tyler Warren is competent. He improves his blocking. He comes in. He can line up in line as much as we'd hope. But I don't see how it fits from a receiving perspective, and that's before we've even gotten to the accuracy and passing concerns at quarterback, whether that's Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So yeah, I really don't like the landing spot for 2025. Who knows who the quarterback is? Who knows who the offensive coordinator, head coach is in 2026? It might turn into a good landing spot, but for redraft, for immediate dynasty impact, I just don't see it.
Let's stick with the better chance. Better chance that Tyler Warren is more productive than Colston Loveland over the next 5 years, or that a tight end who hasn't been drafted yet is more productive than Tyler Warren?
I'd definitely take the tight end that's not been drafted over Tyler Warren than Warren over Loveland for sure.
We're going to keep manifesting day 2 Harold Fannin to the Chiefs and
Mason Taylor to the Jets. Yep.
Mason Taylor to the Jets, and then we'll see where Tyler Warren falls after that. So would you rather have Hawkinson than Warren today?
Yes. Yeah. I've got Warren's probably going to fall in around tight end 8 or 9 for me, around sort of Tucker Kraft, Mark Andrews, Goddard, Kelsey, that sort of range.
Tight ends, and get back to RB2, Omarion Hampton. The RB2 in probably rookie drafts, definitely in the NFL draft, goes to the Chargers with the number 22 pick. The most common response I've seen, and I saw it in our group chat, I saw it on Twitter, is I don't really like that for 2025, but man, he's going to be awesome in that system moving forward.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I love the draft capital. I love the situation. I'd like to see them invest in the interior of the offensive line a little bit more.
Right.
I wonder if we're going to see a Jonathan Taylor-like rookie year where he's quiet for the first half of the year and then could potentially take over and be a league winner down the stretch. I think he's got that in his range of outcomes. If this offense is what it could be and he is what it could be, I think it's fantastic.
Do you think he's a Jonathan Taylor-like talent?
Maybe a little bit below that. I think he's 93rd percentile in my model, so he's kind of a tier 2 prospect. Jonathan Taylor was like a 1.5 tiered prospect. He was sort of 95th. So yeah, I think he's a very, very good prospect, but not elite.
And this is either the 103 or the 104 for you, depending on whether you need a running back or a wide receiver. He and Tetairoa McMillan relatively close in terms of value. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a toss-up pick. It's probably, if you're looking to compete in 2025, I'd probably lean Hampton. If you're looking for the future, I'd lean Tetairoa McMillan. And then, as you said, kind of potentially draft need leans either way.
The dynasty running back landscape, part of the reason Ashton Jeanty is just immediately a top 3 running back is because he's that good. Part of the reason is because it is frightening to look at like RB 7 through 12 right now in the rankings, because every one of them I can make a case of, there's big risk ahead. So when I slide Hampton into the rankings, I initially have him at RB 12. Jonathan Taylor is 3 spots ahead of him. Saquon Barkley is 4 spots ahead of him. Actually, it's RB 11. I apologize. Where were you at on Hampton? And specifically, how do you compare him to guys like Breece Hall, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving?
So he's RB8 for me,
okay.
But he's in a tier with basically all those guys you listed. So yeah, I've got Breece Hall, Bucky Irving ahead of him. I've got Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown directly after him. So as you said, it's basically throw a hat over all of them, and depends what you fancy really as to which way you'd lean.
Do you think that his value is any different based on the scoring system? Is he better in half PPR than full PPR because of the system or because of the skill set? How many catches do you expect for Hampton?
Can I ask that question in 2 days' time when I know if they've drafted another wide receiver? I think that depends on it. Is that if they're not going to add any more pass catchers, I think we're going to see a lot of schemed up touches for the running backs, whether that be in kind of the screen game or little dump offs and things like that. In which case, I'd probably be a bit higher in PPR leagues. If they were to add, one of these bigger bodied outside receivers, that means McConkey can be that manufactured touch guy, then I'd probably be a little bit lower on Hampton in pure PPR formats.
Is there any chance that a running back gets drafted tonight and it moves ahead of Hampton? Like, there's still a lot of opportunities. I've really been thinking the Quinshon Judkins Browns connection makes a lot of sense. We have heard that the Broncos really like Trevion Henderson, and people see him as the next Alvin Kamara in Sean Payton's system. If they're early day 2, early round 2 running backs, is there any chance they're ahead of Hampton?
No, I don't think there's anybody left out there, any landing spot, any draft capital that would change that mind. Maybe if like the Chiefs traded up for the 33rd pick and took Trevion Henderson, something like that, maybe I'd rethink it. But no, I don't think there's any situation that would have anyone above Hampton.
But what if we're just talking about 2025? Could you see a running back landing somewhere without a Najee Harris and being better than him as a rookie?
Yeah, definitely. I think if any of those guys in that next tier, so you're talking Henderson, Judkins, if they land in a spot where they have the backfield to themselves, then I think for 2025 redraft purposes, you've got to have them above Hampton, just because Hampton's got a Najee Harris sized figure looming over him for competing for touches.
Who would you project to have more touches in 2025, Harris or Hampton?
I'd expect it to be close, but I think it's going to be one of these that's like a 60-40 split Harris to start the season. Mm-hmm. And then as the season goes on, it transitions to Hampton. And then as we get towards the end of the season, it's potentially going to be a 60-40, 70-30 split towards Hampton.
Yeah, and I think it's good to remember that, like, traditionally, Greg Roman has liked to put 2 running backs out there, and we saw a more even split than we should have between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards earlier this year. So I think that split expectation and expecting it to change throughout the year, I don't really think, unless Harris is hurt, that we're probably getting a 70% split for Hampton in his rookie season. I think he's probably capped at around 60%. That makes sense. Now, in this offense, you could go score 12 touchdowns and that's okay. You still have a great season. I also am a little bit concerned that Harris gets the short yardage work to begin, although both backs should be good at that. We've got 2 first-round rookies left to talk about. Yeah, we should have 3. Let's talk about Emeka Egbuka to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love this guy's game. He has shown the ability to produce with elite wide receivers around him. I thought he came into the year like one of those guys that could be polished and contribute right away. And then he lands on a team with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. I have no idea what the Buccaneers were thinking, but still, great system, great player. How do you feel about Egbuka?
I absolutely love Egbuka, the prospect. I agree with everything you said. I feel like he's just the perfect wide receiver 2 for an NFL team in terms of good route runner, good separation, does all the dirty work, can do all that kind of stuff. And then, as you said, my like dream upside was Chris Godwin as like his ideal role, ideal situation, and he's now sat behind Chris Godwin. And I think I'm the person that sits here and preaches, landing spots are relevant for wide receivers, draft talent, and all that kind of stuff. And then you're looking at it, it's like, okay, so best case scenario, he's the wide receiver 3 and he beats out Jalen McMillan as a rookie. Could he take over in 2026? Well, the Bucs are paying $25 million to Mike Evans and $33 million to Chris Godwin with no outs in those contracts. And it's like, okay, so both those guys are on the team in 2026. So are we saying it's 2027 before he can be, the target leader in the offense? That's a long time for me to be waiting for a dynasty prospect. So Yeah, I'm really struggling with my adage of talent over need and landing spot is irrelevant, but I just really like the player, so it's tough to ignore.
You think he falls to round 2 of rookie drafts now because of this landing spot and the delayed outcome?
Yeah, I think with as long as we see it at some running backs go early day 2, I think the run on wide receivers that we're expecting in terms of 4 or 5 guys go probably in round 2. I'd imagine he falls, if not into round 2, at very back end of round 1.
I will say, if you're a guy who's entering a true rebuild and you get a chance to start your draft with one of these elite players at the very top, maybe you take Cam Ward at 102, and then you can take Egbuka at 202, and you don't care how many fantasy points you score this year, that's a pretty ideal situation. I think you're getting a first-round talent in the second round of your draft, and the period of time where he's not going to score points, you don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also go away, to your calendar, whatever you use, and write up 1st of October by Emeka Egbuka, because I think he's going to have a slow start to the year, and I think that people are going to start to forget about him. And I will be certainly looking to scoop up some extra shares in the middle of the season once he's potentially not scoring many fantasy points.
That being said, that does have an impact, not scoring points early in his career. So he is down to my wide receiver 30 as of right now. Where do you have him?
So I haven't entered him into my rank check, just because it depends a little bit what's going to happen early day 2 as to where he sits. But yeah, I'd imagine he'll be in that kind of wide receiver 30-ish range. I'm just looking now. Yeah, I've got probably around Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Chris Godwin, interestingly, in that sort of wide receiver 30 range.
I really wanted Egbuka to go to the Packers because I thought that he would become the clear number 1 there in a hurry. And they haven't had a number 1, but that they acted like in the offseason maybe they want one. Well, they went out and drafted Matthew Golden, who I actually really like a lot more in a wide receiver 2 type of setting. I'm not sure he's an alpha number 1. So what did you like? This is an offense that basically gives nobody 100 targets since Matt LaFleur's gotten there. Devontae Adams is the last guy, I think, to do that for them. Is Golden the next? Is he the best wide receiver on his own team now?
No, I think for fantasy, I'd still rather have Jaden Reed straight up over Golden. I'm not the biggest Golden fan as a player. I think I get what the Packers are doing because I think it makes sense. And you've got kind of Dubs or Wicks as your X. You've got Golden as that vertical kind of flanker. You've got Reed as the prototypical slot. You've got Kraft, who can, be a prototypical inline tight end. That makes sense as an offense, and you can spread the ball around. Right. Just for fantasy, it's just not great because I think that he's not going to see the volume. I think there will be some high value touches because I think he's going to be seen downfield. We're probably going to have an ADOT north of 12, 13, something like that, which is interesting. But for traditional formats where we're having to pick a player into your lineup each week, it's going to be a headache because I think he's going to be a little bit boom bust. So I'd rather lean towards the manufactured touches of, the screen game and handoffs and things like that I think Jaden Reed could have because it gives a bit better floor.
I've got Golden at wide receiver 27, so just a couple of spots ahead of Egbuka. I would definitely rather draft him in a league where I don't have to choose what weeks to start him because I think you're exactly right. It might be the Christian Watson experience where he may get 2 targets one week and score 2 touchdowns the next week. But again, probably a guy who's right on the border of round 1 and round 2 in rookie drafts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably a little bit lower. I'd have him below Egbuka, both in my receiver ranks and in rookie ranks. I just think that, as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the prospect, and although it's more immediate playing time, if we're looking next year, Christian Watson comes back. Like it just gets even messier, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm not as high and as hopeful as you are. That sounds a bit.
I think one of the guys in superflex leagues that people are going to be comparing and contrasting with these 2 wide receivers who were drafted in round 1 is the second quarterback drafted in round 1. The Giants trade back into round 1 to draft Jaxon Dart, They must do a reality television show with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jaxon Dart. I demand it this season. It's going to be fantastic. Were you big on Dart coming into the draft? And do you think he has a chance to be a 5-year starter in the NFL?
First of all, let's not forget about Tommy DeVito in that mix as well. That's some more entertainment in there as well. No, I wasn't a big Dart believer. I think the physical tools are there, the talent's there. How can we project a guy that basically was never asked to process in college? This is a guy that, was never asked to go from read 1 to 2 to 3. It was, this is where the ball's going. This is the one read you have to make. That's a big learning curve. I don't understand what the Giants are doing. Like, this is a guy that we're saying needs some time to sit. I think it would be great in an ideal world where you've got Wilson, Jameis Winston that can sit there, be the vets, allow Dart some time to sit. But this is a head coach and a GM that are on the hot seat. And I think that anytime you spend a first round pick, there's going to be pressure to start. If they start losing a few games, we're going to see Dart thrown in, which scares me because I think he really needs at least a year or two to sit. And I don't think he's going to get that. So I'm nervous about Dart as a prospect. And this landing spot and situation makes me even more nervous.
I'm nervous for the other reason, because I think Brian Dable's shown an ability to win games that he shouldn't win, and probably wishes he's won a few less games over the last 3 years. So he could have drafted a quarterback that he liked more than Jaxon Dart. But I could see a real situation where we don't really learn much about Dart this year. The Giants are bad again. And then they have a complete regime change. And he has a new coach and a new GM that's not attached to him at all.
Yep.
So it's a first round quarterback, and it is in superflex, those matter a lot. I'm going to take Golden and Egbuka ahead of Jaxon Dart.
Yes, for everything we talked about Cam Ward and how his value is insulated because he's that 101 and the Titans, he's going to be a starting quarterback for at least 2 years. As you said, if, worst case scenario, the Giants start Russell Wilson for 6 games, he's bad, they bench him, they play Jameis Winston for 3, they bench him, Brian Dable's fighting for his job, he needs to throw in Jaxon Dart and say, I drafted him, this is the future. That doesn't work out. Whoever comes in as head coach has got no ties to Jaxon Dart. He's got no insulation at all. And I'd be really nervous. So, I think, all of it just makes me incredibly worried. And I always say that any quarterback that has got a clear-cut, safe starting job is worth at least a first rounder in Superflex leagues. I don't know if I can spend a first rounder on someone like Jaxon Dart, given those concerns and nervousness.
Shedeur Sanders, let's say, gets drafted in the first 10 picks tonight, gets taken by the Browns or the Saints, and we get indications that they're hoping that he can start this year. Sanders or Dart in rookie drafts?
I think if Sanders ends up on the Browns, it's easily Sanders for me. If he ends up on the Saints, who knows what's going on with Derek Carr? It would probably be a toss-up, and I'd probably just say I won't draft either. But if Sanders ends up on the Browns, what is it, pick 33 today? I'd have him over Dart. And
then is there any chance that Jalen Milroe ends up ahead of both of them?
I really hope so. I really hope that someone takes a shot. Like we dream of these like fantasy unicorns of what Jalen Milroe could be. This is a guy that can throw the ball all over the field, is one of the best pure runners in terms of athleticism and instincts we've seen in years. I just dream that somebody is going to give him the chance. So I really hope so, but who knows? It wouldn't shock me if he fell to day 3, to be honest.
Rich, you've been so generous with your time. I appreciate all the information. We always learn something when you're on the show. If you want to, give me 2 or 3 things you're really hoping to see tonight.
So Mason Taylor to the Jets. I've been trying to talk this into existence for the last 3 months. And then I just pray that Travion Henderson doesn't end up on the Browns. Like that would just cripple me as a fantasy, as a fan, as everything. I just don't want to see him torn away out there.
No, those are. We'll add those 2 to the Harold fan and to the Chiefs. And let's get a lot. Let's get 5 or 10 running backs and wide receivers in round 2 tonight. That'd be a lot of fun, even though it'd be a lot of words to write and say. Thank you very much, Rich. One more time, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, find me over at Dicey Island on Twitter, and all my work is on the Fantasy Sanctuary.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Claire, for making everything work. Thank you, everybody who was active in the chat. We will talk to you next Tuesday.